Hey guys, welcome to Grozio Arts. I'm just working on the Okay guys, so I am live and I am correcting some things that I have here. So I'm just working on my Ghostbuster project and I have some epoxy here. Epoxy. And what I'm trying to do is this is the Ghostbuster Proton Pack. And what I'm trying to do right now is just smooth out some of the rough edges that are in the corners that you can't really see. Like down here, for example, right there. You can't really see it, but if you stick it in the light, there's some rough edges down there on the edge where the fiberglass didn't really sit down properly. And right now I'm just going over that with epoxy and see if that'll smooth it out. So with epoxy, you always gotta get two parts. So it's part A, part B, and they have to be about equal amounts. And when you mix them, that's part A, I think. That's part A, and that's part B. And when you mix them, they should be equal quantities. This one needs a little bit more. It gets dry and it hardens. But if you don't mix them right, it'll stay soft. That's a little bit too much. And I like epoxy sculpt. It's very diverse. See, once I have two parts, I just mush them together and I mix them up so that once they're properly mixed, I can go ahead and apply it and smooth out all the stuff that I need to smooth out. Like for example here, where it's gray, that's epoxy sculpt. And on this Ghostbuster proton pack that I've been making for a while, I want to go ahead and use the right amount of epoxy. And smooth everything out that was rough. And I got my mixture right here. Just have to mix it properly. And what I'm going to do is once I mix it properly, I'm going to go ahead and apply it to all the rough edges, like what I did right here, where it's gray. The fiberglass was kind of flared out, and I had to sand it down with my sandpaper. And once I got it smooth, there were some holes, so I used the epoxy sculpt to go ahead and cover that, to go ahead and cover it and make it smooth again. And then I can go ahead and paint it. But this is a Ghostbuster Proton Pack that I'm doing some cosplay work on. And it's pretty much done. It just has to be smoothed out and then painted, the final paint job. But yeah, I am pretty much there. So I'm just rolling the epoxy sculpt that I got here. And I'm trying to fix some stuff here on the Ghostbuster Proton Pack that I've been making. So this is the Ghostbuster pack that you see on the movies. And I pretty much made mine. I'm just roughing out some, or smoothing out some edges that are in there. Trying to get it smooth. So this is the epoxy sculpt that I put on and the different areas that just needs to be smoothed out. Some areas, as you can see, have already started to get paint on them. But yeah, I think I'm pretty much on the final phase of finishing this cosplay project. So this is my epoxy sculpt. One part A, one part B, and I'm just mixing it up right now, making sure it's ready so that it'll dry properly. But yeah, everything is pretty much in place. So this is the other side. This is the bottom part of the Ghostbuster pack. And these are the tubes. I think this part here, this is where lights go inside of this box. And I think my power source is going to go in here because there's a hole right there. And this is just epoxy sculpt to smooth everything out. This is a aluminum can. And this still needs to be painted. But it's the same thing as this. So once I have everything more or less mixed well, I'm going to go ahead and just start putting this on areas where the fiberglass didn't go on well. So there's a lot of rough edges, but I'm almost done. So I think that's pretty good right there. It's just like Play-Doh, but you got to mix it right. If you don't mix it right, it's not going to dry. Yeah, there you go. Okay. So I'm just going to get some epoxy get some water. Water helps to keep this pliable so it won't dry fast. And there's an edge in here that I didn't like, right down there, in there, that needs to be roughed out or smoothed out. So I'm just gonna get this and apply it right into this edge so that it'll look cleaner and smoother, more professional looking. Get some water and then stretch it out. So that's why I'm pretty much not afraid to make any mistakes, because if you do make a mistake, like in wood or metal or plastic, you can use a epoxy sculpt to go ahead and fix it or to fill it out, which is what I'm doing here. I'm just smoothing everything out. Yeah, I think the camera can pick it up really well. Yeah, there you go. So that edge right there, that gray edge, that's what I'm filling in. Yeah. Yeah, there you go. That edge. Filling that in so it can be smoother and nicer. And when I do the final paint coat, it'll go on there nice and it won't look ugly. So a lot of people think this is cosplay, but at the same time, and it is, but at the same time, I think it's art because you're actually making something with your hands, and it has to look like what it is intended to look like. And I've never done a video where, obviously I've done other videos where I'm working, but a lot of that is just cut out for time or sped up. And I've just never done like a live broadcast of me doing it. And that's what I want to go ahead and do now. So if anybody's out there, you want to ask me a question, feel free to ask me a question in the chat as I work. I can go ahead and answer any questions if you have any questions. That's totally cool. But basically, that's what I'm doing. This is the epoxy sculpt that I used to get. It's not enough. I got the 5-pound version, which is like 2.5 pounds each of these. Just try to get in there. And there's still a lot of places where there's still a lot of places where the fiberglass is still pretty spiky. Like there's a lot of fibers that dried. There's a lot of fibers that dried and they're like needles poking at you. And I tried sanding them, but some of them you just can't reach. So I'm just going to cover them with epoxy. And I think I'm going to go ahead and say this now. I did this project in order to experiment with fiberglass, because even though I used fiberglass in high school to make airplane parts, I wanted to see if it could be used for cosplay, and it can, because it does have multiple uses. But in a project like this that has a lot of angles, it has like a lot of 90-degree angles and boxes and squares, Fiberglass is kind of hard to use on something like that. It goes fine over parts that are curved, but like angles, it doesn't stick as well to an angle, 90-degree angle. So if I had to do this project again, which hopefully in the future I get to make another proton pack, I would make it out of basswood or balsa wood. Balsa wood is wood, but it's really, really light. It's a really lightweight. Most of the other guys who make this proton pack, they make it out of wood. They make it out of like 2x4s and the same kind of wood you would use to build a house. And that wood is really heavy. And I did this out of cardboard, and then over the cardboard I built fiberglass so it could be super hard to prove a point that this thing, like, I could lift it up with one hand because it's so light, but it's very strong. So it did work out, but I would working with fiberglass is really messy, and it's dangerous because sooner or later you're going to have to sand it down. And then you get fiberglass dust, and you don't want that going inside your lungs. I think I already have some in my lungs. But, you try to use a mask. Be as careful as you can. But, once you sand fiberglass, it basically just gets everywhere. See, like that? That's a fiberglass needle that broke off. But the real dangerous pieces are the tiny, thin hair fiberglass fibers that I can see them shining here. If they get airborne and I breathe them in, they don't come back out. So this is cosplay and all the work that goes into it. Or art, which to me there's no difference. Cosplay, art, painting, sculpting, it's all the same. It takes a lot of work, especially if you do it correctly and well, and you want it to look nice. So, yeah, if you're out there, feel free to ask me a question about anything, really. There's no moderators here, so I'm not going to get mad if you cuss or anything like that. So again, if you're just joining me, I'm just working on this Ghostbuster project that I've been working on for a while, and I'm smoothing out all the really bad, rough areas that where the fiberglass fibers are sticking out. Sanding it down isn't going to do much anymore. And right now I'm just covering them. And like most people would say, like, why waste your time on that? Because people can't see it anyway, which is kind of true. But I'd rather cover up these fibers. That way they're not at risk than, you know, having them break off later and posing a health risk to me or anybody else later. But yeah, if I had to do this project again, I think I would do it out of basswood or balsa wood. I think the end result would have been the same. Maybe the basswood would have been a little bit heavier, just a little bit. But just a little bit. So I don't know if you can see that area, this area where I'm putting all that gray in. That's what I'm trying to fix. Yeah, there you go. So this area right here, that's where I'm filling it up and making sure that it's smooth and all the fiberglass dust and stuff is just covered. There's a lot of areas here that are just, when the fiberglass dried, they didn't dry or stick to the foundation. And there's a lot of fibers that are just, sticking out everywhere. And it's taken a lot of money to cover them up. That's why if I ever did this project again, I would just make it out of basswood. I mean, it was fun to test the theory that I had that you can make anything in a cardboard, as long as you use it as a foundation. But yeah. So if you're just joining me, I'm working on the Ghostbuster Proton Pack, and I'm using a epoxy sculpt to cover up some rough edges. This is the Ghostbuster Proton Pack, and all that gray stuff you see is the epoxy sculpt that I'm using to cover and smooth things out. Some areas are not going to be smoothed out because you're not going to be able to see them anyway. I got this dome that's going to go on top of here, like that. So I'm not going to focus too much on this, but there's still a lot of areas, like right here, that need to be smoothed out before I do the final paint job. There's a lot of fiberglass sticking out. It's already hardened, but if it breaks off, it'll be a health risk to me and anybody who's breathing it in. And I don't want. That's the only thing I don't like about fiberglass is that it breaks so easily and it's so dangerous because it goes into your lungs and you never know how much you breathed in. or how much the damage is, or when it's actually going to start to affect you. So that was my only regret with this project. The fiberglass is very messy, and it's just, once you roll it off, it's just starts breaking automatically. Once you put the resin on, it's, yeah. So yeah, if you're just joining me, I'm working on the Ghostbuster Proton Pack. I feel like I'm 99% finished, but right now I'm just doing that work where we're just covering all the rough edges and using epoxy sculpt, a lot of epoxy sculpt to smooth everything out. Because I feel like sanding has already been completed. We sanded down everything we could sand, but there's empty holes where the fiberglass broke, and it just needs to be smoothed out with a layer of epoxy sculpt so it could just look like one uniform piece. And I'm using some water to keep it wet so I can work with it longer. And this is the art that I do. So feel free to message or say something, or if you want to ask what I'm doing, I can see what you're going to type and I can respond to any questions. But yeah, this is pretty therapeutic. I think it's similar to quilting or painting or something like that. And I'm just smoothing out edges. Like I said, this is the Ghostbuster Proton Pack. You can't recognize it now because it's not fully painted, but that's what it is. This is the Proton Pack that the Ghostbusters use. It's already 99% completed. I'm just doing the final touch-up work. And I was thinking I can go ahead and just, since I'm doing it anyway, I could make a video out of it and go live. I do have an art channel, it's Grazio Arts, where I've uploaded other projects that I've done, Jumanji projects, body painting projects. If you want to go ahead and check those out, let me know what you think. Really appreciate your opinion. And as you can see, all the stuff that I'm doing, I'm just putting it on so that it would be smoothed out. A lot of work went into this. It all started off as cardboard, but then it was layered with fiberglass, so it could be really hard. And you can hit this thing, it's not going to break. And it's super lightweight, which is why I did it. It was cardboard and fiberglass and epoxy sculpt. There is some wood in here, but I think it's less than like 5% of wood. All of it is cardboard and fiberglass. I think I'm exaggerating with the wood. I think it's less than like 2% wood. Right now I'm just filling in all the crevices and making sure everything is smooth. Or mostly everything is smooth. This is just me working on it. There's tiny areas that I've always kind of ignored because it's just, they're so tiny, but they're so messy. Like in here, there's like an edge that didn't fill completely with fiberglass and resin. And right now, it's all, because it dried up, it's kind of like a cactus. All the fiberglass is just pointy little pricks. Because when you use fiberglass initially, it's like a cloth. But once you put resin on it and it starts to dry, it gets rigid and hard, and that's where the strength comes from. But if it doesn't dry flat, all those fibers stand up, and it sucks when one of those fibers gets in between your fingernail and your finger. Oh, it's like the worst pain in the world. These are on pretty well. They're in my way a little bit, but that's okay. So if you're just joining me, I'm finishing the Ghostbuster Proton Pack. I am an artist and I do cosplay. It looks a little messy right now because I'm fixing all the damaged areas, but this is the Ghostbuster Proton Pack. that I've been making for a while now, and right now I'm just going over the areas that do need a little touch up before the final coat of paint goes on there. You can see I've already started working with some paints right here, where I have pretty much a good idea of how I'm going to paint it. The construction is exactly like the movie, The Ghostbusters, but the paint job's going to be totally different. And it's going to be something that has never been seen before. So, just to show you what I'm working on, I'm working on that inner edge right here and up here, flattening some areas because it's pretty messy in there. The resin didn't really stick. So yeah, if you're just joining me, I'm working on the Ghostbuster Proton Pack. It doesn't look like much right now because it's not fully painted, but I'm smoothing out all the rough areas before I do the final coat. But that's what I'm doing right now. If you're just joining me, this is the Ghostbuster Proton Pack from the side, and I'm just working with some epoxy sculpt to go ahead and finish it. This is going to go on my back once it's completed. And like I said, I'm just finishing some really rough edges in here that cannot be sanded down but need to be covered because the fiberglass is lifted up and it just looks nasty. But if you have any opinions on how this Proton Pack looks, feel free to comment in the chat box. Or if you have any questions, I can go ahead and answer you. I am live. If you guys want to go ahead and check out my art, I do have a YouTube channel, obviously. And I just opened up an Etsy shop and a Shopify shop where I sell my art and print of my art. I do nude art, and I have some prints up there if you want to go ahead and go to Etsy and search for Grazio Art, or go to Shopify and go to Grazio Art, or you can just go to my channel and there's a link to one of the shops there. I think it's on the last video I posted. And I've never done a live video before where I'm actually working, but since that's what I'm doing now, I figured I would go ahead and do it live. Feel free to comment if you're out there. There's no moderator, so feel free to cuss all you want. Yeah, I don't know why they put moderators on chat rooms. You know, if you can't cuss in public and you can't cuss online, why even go? And right now I'm just using epoxy sculpt to cover these really bad rough areas that cannot be sanded down because of the space, but they need to be covered up somehow. So this is the top of the Ghostbuster proton pack. And this is a side, or one side. Some lights are going to go here, or inside this box that I left empty. Wires are going to go through these tubes, and they're going to connect to the other box where there's a lot of room for electronics and a battery. But yeah, I've already come up with a paint scheme that I'm going to do. And right now I'm just trying to finish to smooth out some areas before I do the final paint job, because I really want to go ahead and do that final paint job and then get the decals on. Like, for example, this spot right here has a big bump, but before I sand it, I want to get some epoxy on there. So when I do sand it, the fiberglass will stick to the epoxy and blow some other way. And I'm just trying to smooth this out as much as I can. But yeah, this thing started off as cardboard, and it's pretty strong thanks to the epoxy sculpt. I think I have some fiberglass on my arms, starting to sting. Putting my hands and arms all over this thing, and it's covered in fiberglass dust. But like I was saying, I've never done a live video before of me working, because honestly, it's kind of I'm not going to say boring, but it's just me working. This is the way art is done. It's sometimes messy, it's sometimes slow, it's sometimes tedious, and yeah, it's just the way it is. So I think that's most of it. I need to cover this part right here. It's kind of like a round corner up here. And every time I think I'm done, I find another area that has fiberglass splinters. Yeah, but if you like what I'm doing here and you want to check out my channel, I do have other videos of this project and of other projects I've done. Feel free to check it out. Feel free to like my video, share the channel. I did open up an Etsy shop not too long ago, and I'm selling some prints on there. And I'm using epoxy sculpt just to do the finishing touches and smooth stuff out a little bit. Excuse me. But yeah, I feel I'm pretty much 99% done or 98% done of building stuff. Give him a little. It has to have equal parts, so this is part B. Epoxy comes in two parts. This is part A and part B. And you have to mix them roughly the same size so that it can mix. If it doesn't mix properly, it won't dry and it won't get hard. So if you want to ask me a question or just leave me a comment, I can go ahead and answer any question you might have. I can see the comments in the chat. So don't be afraid to say hey. But pretty much that's all I'm doing right now is just working to finish this up. But I originally wanted to get this finished by Halloween, but realistically, a project like this requires a lot of work, and I was working at the time, so I didn't have a lot of time just after work. A few 1 hour or 2 hours that I had to work on it, and when I got it, it was after I had stopped working on it for a year, and it was just epoxy. It was just fiberglass. The whole thing was covered in fiberglass, and since October, it has come a long way. I didn't think it was going to get this far, but it has come a long way in its evolution, and now it's almost done. So I am pretty proud of that. I didn't think I'd see the day when that would happen.
Was overseas.
I'm just mixing the epoxy. It's kind of like Play-Doh. But this is basically my work process. What I'm doing right now is just finishing up and cleaning up areas before I do the final paint coat. And this is kind of similar to my Mighty Duck project, where the Mighty Duck project was made out of poster board. I made the helmet out of poster board, but I covered it in epoxy like this. And once it got hard, it became a rigid structure that I could take on and off of my head. And it worked out pretty well. I kind of liked it. One area was kind of thin and it broke, but I can easily fix it and just put more epoxy on there, make it thicker, and that will fix it. But yeah. So right now I'm just smoothing all those parts up. I'm getting these horrible fibers covered because not only do they look awful, but they're dangerous too because they're really, really hard. They're like needles, cactus needles. And if I rub my hand through there and one gets caught in between my nail and my finger, oh, that's such a bitch. It hurts so much. And I can't reach down there to sand it. So So if you have a question or if you want to ask me what I'm doing or how I'm doing it or a question about my art or anything, feel free to ask a question in the chat window. I can go ahead and see it and answer your question. So yeah, if you're just joining me, I'm working on a Ghostbuster project. This is the Ghostbuster Proton Pack. I'm just using epoxy scope to go ahead and smooth out some edges. I'm doing that by hand, of course. I know right now the proton pack looks a little bit rough, but it is, believe it or not, 99% done. It's just waiting for the final coat of paint. And then I can go ahead and start applying the stickers. I want to make sure this isn't coming off. Okay, now that's still on. And I'm just using epoxy scope to go ahead and cover or smooth out the rough edges. So this is the epoxy scope that I'm using. Part A and part B, you have to mix them in just the right amount so that when you apply it, like a clay, it'll dry with the air. And basically what I'm doing now is just smoothing things out. There are a lot of rough edges on this project. It is made out of fiberglass to go ahead and do this. But yeah, it worked out pretty well. But there were a lot of areas that were kind of lumpy, and sanding them doesn't seem to have helped. So I'm covering them up. And it's okay for it to have a few rough edges. I mean, the Ghostbuster stuff isn't perfect either, so that's okay. But I want it to be at least as clean as I could possibly get it. There's a lot of rough areas here. But yeah, I know it doesn't look like much right now, but there has been a lot of construction here, here, and along the I think you can get a better detail if I would have liked that of all the different shapes that are along here. This is the Ghostbuster project. And this dome was like one of the last pieces I had to make. And it goes like that, pretty much. I've been on for an hour. So, yeah, that's basically what I'm doing. So if you're just joining me, I am doing a cosplay project. I'm pretty much done building the construction of it. Right now, what I'm doing is I'm just smoothing out the edges. This is the Ghostbuster Proton Pack that I'm making. If you don't know what that is, that's the backpack that the Ghostbusters have for busting ghosts. And right now, this is the main body where all this gray stuff that you see here is me just trying to smooth everything out with epoxy sculpt. There's some holes here on this dome that I'm not really going to need, so I have to fill them up and make it flat. So that's pretty much what I'm doing. I'm using some epoxy sculpt to cover areas that need to be covered. I did complete something over here that I've been covering with a bag so that it won't get dirty. But this is that's just to show it to you, that's going to go over here, over the dome, like that. It kind of gives you an idea of where I'm going with this. So. And I just keep it covered so that it won't get dirty. So that's why I keep it covered. But right now I'm just using the epoxy sculpt to go ahead and smooth out areas and just have to make sure it's equal parts of epoxy. Because if they're not equal, it's not going to dry correctly. So this is pretty much the ugly side of cosplay, where you see the artist at work and what the builder has to do in order to complete a project. A lot of the cosplayers use styrene, and there's another foam, but there's another material that I forget what it's called. I've never used that material. I'm not saying it's bad. I've just never used it. This project was made with cardboard and fiberglass. So right now I'm just mixing epoxy sculpt, making sure I get the right mixture. And I'm smoothing out areas on this project. This is the Ghostbuster Proton Pack, a little side view. If I stand it up, you'll be able to see what it looks like entirely. Just having a ball of clay, but it has to be mixed right. If I don't mix it right, it's not going to harden. Right now what I want to do is that this dome has 2 holes on it. And I want to cover those up because depending on the orientation of the thing, those holes are going to be distracting if they're not aligned. So I'm just going to cover them up. And I'm using epoxy scope to do that. And I'm going to let that dry pretty much before I give it the final paint job. I'm going to clean it up and make sure that dust is off. But that's going to take a few hours for it to dry. But then I have a flat thing to work with. That's going to go here once it's done. And pretty much all I'm doing right now is just finishing the smoothing stuff out. I don't think there's much left for me to do. Pretty much all I'm going to do now is just wait for the stuff that I put on here to dry, all the epoxy to dry, and then just sand it a little bit and do the final coat of paint because I'm pretty tired. And, this project has taken a long time to complete. And I'm almost finished. I can feel it. I'm almost finished. And once I get this finished, I can go ahead and mount it to the frame and then just put it on like the Ghostbusters put it on. I am hoping to do electronics one day on this thing, but that's like a whole nother story. That's like a project in itself. Right now, the only thing I really want to do is just finish the body. This is a Ghostbuster proton pack, if you're not aware. Yeah. And I feel I'm almost done. Believe it or not, a lot of work went into this project. A lot of time has gone into this project. And it was supposed to be super simple. And it was super simple, but a lot of things got in the way. And I was basically experimenting when it came to this project. I feel the experiment was successful. There were some challenges when I was making this project. One being how difficult fiberglass can be. Difficult in the sense that it's very messy to work with. And it's also very dangerous to work with. There's going to be times when you need to sand this thing down, and if it gets into your lungs, it's pretty dangerous. So right now I'm just covering all the parts where the fiberglass didn't dry so smooth. I've pretty much sanded this down a whole bunch of times, but there are areas where the sanding just didn't help, and it needs like a layer of epoxy to smooth it out. Oh crap. See, that's what I'm talking about right there. There's fiberglass fibers that are sticking out, and if they pick you, or they, oh man, I think it's still in there. Yeah, they poke really vicious. Okay, what happened here? Something happened to my finger. I don't know what it is. I don't know if the fiberglass is still in there or if that's just skin. Oh, that hurt like hell. And that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to, if I can't sand them off, because they're not sanding off, I'm trying to cover them and smooth them out with epoxy sculpt so that if my finger ever happens to touch it, it's not going to poke me. That's my only frustration with this project. That there's areas where the epoxy sculpt or the fiberglass is sticking out like needles. They're tiny little needles right here and over here, and they jab your fingers real bad. And I've tried to smooth them out, break them off, and some of them do get away from you. But yeah, this is the Ghostbuster Proton Pack, and it's, for me, 100%, or pretty much 100% completed. There's tiny little details that need to be added on, but as far as construction goes, I no longer need to construct anything. The construction period has ended, thank God. I did have fun making this project, but it has been a chore in itself. It's been challenging to go from start to finish. And I think a lot of that was because this project started off with a cardboard frame. So all of this was cardboard. And then I covered it with fiberglass. And since I covered it with fiberglass, it's pretty hard. And then all the parts that weren't, that were kind of rough, I applied epoxy sculpt. So it's cardboard, fiberglass, and then epoxy sculpt, 3 layers. The reason I did that was because I wanted to test a theory that a lot of guys who make the Ghostbuster pack make it out of wood, really dense wood, and it's really heavy. This, as you can see, I'm lifting it up with one hand, and it's really lightweight, but it's super strong. So I wanted to know if I could make something like that, and I could. So my idea works, but working with fiberglass is just awful because fibers get everywhere. You breathe them in. It's just awful. And you can't control where they go. I mean, to a point you can, but see, like there's these fibers here that never got any resin. Okay, well, I'm kind of tired right now. And I think I'm going to go ahead and cut the stream. I just cut my finger really bad. Yeah, the fiberglass fibers cut my finger. But I think that's all I'm going to do for tonight. I was sanding a little bit earlier, so some of it is covered with dust, even though I tried to wipe it off as much as I could. But yeah, that's all I was doing. I was just sanding it down and what I think I'm going to do tomorrow is I think I'm just going to go ahead and put the final paint coat on there. And I think I'm going to finish the dome, which should go like that. And then just put the final coat of paint, sand down the last parts that are really, really bad, like this. It's not like a clean angle right here. And I'm going to go ahead and just do the final paint job and start connecting all the hoses. There's one hose that goes here and connects there. And do the final paint job on this, even though it's not entirely flat, but I think it's going to work out fine. So yeah, I'm going to go ahead and cut the stream here. If you have any questions, go ahead and catch me before I go. If you like what I'm doing here with the Ghostbuster Proton Pack, go ahead and look at my videos, look at my channel, check out the other projects I've done. I've done a lot of other projects, and I have a lot of other projects planned out, especially more costumes, more heroes. So hopefully I can go ahead and get all those done. I've always wanted to go ahead and do The Purge, Abraham Lincoln from The Purge. I want to go ahead and do Judge Dredd. And I'm not talking about just the helmets, but the whole thing. That's going to be a whopper of a project. But I'm really hoping it'll be fun, like this one for the Ghostbusters. So thank you so much for tuning in, those of you who tuned in. Sorry, and I will check you guys out later. Thank you so much for coming to check me out. Check out the rest of my videos on my channel. I really hope you guys like them. Again, I did open up a Shopify store and an Etsy store where I'm selling art prints that I've done. There is a description in my last video, so go ahead and check them out. If you can't donate or buy anything, please go ahead and share the videos. Show your support by sharing the videos. Subscribe to my channel. Click on the notification bell so you can get all the updates to the latest cosplay projects and art projects that I'm doing. Again, this is the Ghostbuster project. I'm smoothing stuff out, and I'm getting ready for the final paint job and the decal application, all the stickers that are going to go on here. So again, I'm going to go ahead and sign out. I'm going to go ahead and cut off the stream. Go ahead and check out my channel for more updates on this Proton Pack and all the other art that I've done. And I will see you guys next time.